Dangerous Pirate was impressed by the human boy's ferocity. What he did next? The skies over Tarsus Prime burned crimson as the pirate fleet descended upon the mining colony. Sirens wailed across the settlement, but it was too late. The alien marauders had already breached the city's meager defenses. Residents scattered like startled birds, some clutching valuables, others simply running for their lives. 7-year-old Kyle Morrison stood frozen in the doorway of the small prefab unit he'd called home since his parents died in the mine collapse last winter. His chestnut hair was matted with dust, his face smudged with the ever-present soot that coated everything in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. The colony's emergency response had been pathetic. A handful of outdated security droids and a few volunteer militia who'd been overwhelmed within minutes. Now alien pirates roamed the streets, their laughter echoing between buildings as they plundered with impunity. Kyle's small hands trembled as he gripped the metal pipe he'd pulled from beneath his cot. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all he had. His eyes burned not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Pure, unfiltered rage. "They can't just take everything," he whispered, knuckles whitening around the pipe. The boy stepped into the street just as a group of pirates rounded the corner. They were tall, muscular humanoids with skin in various shades of blue, their bodies adorned with battle scars and crude tattoos. Heavy armor covered their torsos, and each carried weapons that pulsed with energy Kyle had never seen before. "Look at this," one of them called out, pointing at Kyle. "A human whelp thinks he's going to fight us." The pirates erupted in laughter, but Kyle didn't back down. Instead, he charged forward with a primal scream, swinging his pipe wildly at the nearest alien's knees. The pirate easily sidestepped the attack, still chuckling. "Got some fire in you? Don't you, dirt child?" Kyle swung again and again, each attack more desperate than the last. "This is our home. Get out! Get out!" The laughter died down as the boy continued his hopeless assault. Something in his relentless fury gave even these hardened criminals pause. "Enough of this!" a deep voice commanded. The pirates parted to reveal their leader, taller than the rest with radiant azure skin that seemed to shimmer in the firelight. His long white hair was pulled back in intricate braids, and his eyes were the color of Arctic ice. The heavy, dark gray battle armor he wore was adorned with metal plates that caught the light of nearby flames, and a high collar framed his stern face. In his hand, he held a sword with a blade that glowed white-hot, crackling with barely contained energy. Kyle should have been terrified. Instead, he raised his pipe higher and spat on the ground. "I'm not afraid of you." The pirate leader's expression shifted, not to anger, but to something unexpected. Interest, curiosity, perhaps even respect. "What's your name, human child?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Kyle Morrison," the boy answered, not lowering his weapon. "And you're stealing from my people." The pirate captain studied him for a long moment, then deactivated his energy blade with a flick of his wrist. "I am Captain Draylock of the Stellar Ravager, and you, Kyle Morrison, have more courage than most grown warriors I've encountered." He knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "Tell me, what will you do if I leave? Your parents are gone, yes. I can see it in your eyes." Kyle's jaw clenched. "I'll survive. I always do." Draylock nodded slowly, then stood and turned to his crew. "Change of plans. We're taking the boy." "Captain?" one of the pirates questioned. "Look at him," Draylock said, gesturing toward Kyle, who still stood defiant despite being surrounded. "That rage, that determination. Imagine what he could become with proper training." Kyle lunged forward, swinging his pipe at Draylock's leg. The captain caught it effortlessly, wrenching it from the boy's grip. "You have two choices, Kyle Morrison," Draylock said, tossing the pipe aside. "Stay here in this dying colony, scraping by until the next raid takes what little you have left. Or come with me, become something greater than this dust-covered existence could ever offer you." "I'll never be like you," Kyle spat. Draylock smiled, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished pearl. "No, with that fire in your belly, you'll be far more dangerous." Before Kyle could respond, Draylock moved with surprising speed, scooping the boy up despite his kicking and screaming. As they marched toward their waiting ship, the captain looked down at his struggling captive. "One day, Kyle Morrison, you'll thank me for this day. The galaxy fears the cerulean raiders now, but they haven't seen anything yet. The last thing Kyle saw of his home was the burning silhouette of the mining colony against the darkening sky, growing smaller as the pirate ship ascended into the stars. The first month aboard the Stellar Ravager was a blur of rage and rebellion for Kyle. He refused to eat, attacked anyone who came near him, and spent most of his time locked in the small storage compartment Draylock had designated as his quarters. The human whelp tried to stab Gorn with a food utensil today, reported Tex, Draylock's second-in-command, a leaner blue-skinned cerulean with facial markings that resembled lightning strikes. Perhaps we should space him and be done with it. Draylock leaned back in his captain's chair, watching the stars streak by through the viewport. Patience, old friend. Wild beasts aren't tamed in a day. He's not a pet, Captain, Tex growled. He's a liability. He's an investment, Draylock corrected, one that will pay dividends when properly cultivated. On the 32nd day, Draylock personally unlocked Kyle's quarters. The boy sat huddled in the corner, thin and hollow-eyed, but still defiant. This ends today, Draylock announced, tossing a small bundle onto the floor. Put these on. You stink worse than a Targonian swamp beast. Kyle glared but didn't move. You have two choices, boy, Draylock continued, his voice level. Join my crew and learn to survive among the stars, or continue this pointless resistance until you waste away. Either way, you're not returning to that dust-covered rock you called home. I hate you, Kyle spat. Hate is an excellent motivator, Draylock replied with a slight smile. Channel it properly and it becomes power. I'll be on the training deck in 1 hour. Come and show me your hatred, or stay here and rot. Your choice. To Kyle's own surprise, he found himself on the training deck exactly 59 minutes later, dressed in the simple gray tunic and pants Draylock had provided. The captain stood in the center of a circular arena, his energy sword deactivated but ready at his hip. You came, Draylock observed, his icy eyes revealing nothing. I want to learn how to kill you, Kyle answered honestly. Draylock laughed, a deep, genuine sound that echoed through the chamber. Good. Honesty is the foundation of strength, but first, he tossed Kyle a metal rod similar to the pipe he'd wielded back on Tarsus Prime. You must learn how to fight! The lesson was brutal. Within minutes, Kyle was on the floor, bruised and gasping. Draylock hadn't even drawn his weapon, simply using his superior strength and speed to deflect Kyle's wild attacks and knock him down repeatedly. Rage without technique is useless, Draylock said, helping Kyle to his feet. Again. This pattern continued for weeks. Each day, Kyle would attack with everything he had, and each day, Draylock would methodically dismantle his efforts, pointing out flaws in his stance, his grip, his timing. And each day, Kyle lasted a few seconds longer. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, training became routine. Hatred gave way to determination. Determination fostered focus, and focus began to yield results. 3 months after his capture, Kyle landed his first clean hit on Draylock, a swift strike to the captain's knee that actually made the alien pirate stumble. Well done, Draylock said, rubbing his leg with genuine surprise. You're learning. That night, Kyle was moved from his storage compartment to proper crew quarters, small but with a real bunk and access to the ship's common areas. The crew still regarded him with suspicion, but no one challenged his presence anymore. Why me? Kyle asked one evening, 6 months into his training. They sat in Draylock's private quarters, a Spartan space save for a wall of ancient-looking weapons and a viewport that currently displayed a nebula of swirling purple and blue gases. Draylock considered the question while pouring a viscous amber liquid into 2 cups. He slid one toward Kyle. I've conquered worlds, boy. I've battled warriors from 100 species. He took a sip from his cup. But do you know what I've rarely encountered? True resilience, the kind that burns in humans. Kyle cautiously tasted the drink and immediately regretted it, fighting back a cough as it burned down his throat. Draylock chuckled. Your species is physically unimpressive. No natural weapons, mediocre strength, laughable sensory capabilities. Yet somehow you persist. You thrive. You fight when any rational being would surrender. He leaned forward. I saw that quality in you, standing in that dusty street with nothing but a pipe and fury. So I'm just a curiosity to you? Kyle asked bitterly. No, Draylock replied, his expression serious. You're the future. The Cerulean Raiders need new blood, new thinking. We've grown complacent, predictable. He gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. The galaxy is changing. We must change with it or perish. Kyle stared into his cup, processing this unexpected honesty. I still don't trust you. Good, Draylock said with a nod. Trust is earned, not given. But know this, I will make you strong, Kyle Morrison. Strong enough to choose your own path among the stars. Whether that path follows mine or not, well, that will be an interesting day indeed. For the first time since his abduction, Kyle felt something shift inside him. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first fragile seed of understanding. Approaching Vantis Station, announced the navigator, her four-fingered hand dancing across the holographic controls. Shields at maximum. Cloaking systems engaged. Kyle stood on the bridge of the Stellar Ravager, no longer the scrawny boy who had been taken from Tarsus Prime. At 18, he had grown into his frame, tall for a human, with broad shoulders and the lean, corded muscles of someone trained for both speed and power. His chestnut hair was cropped short on the sides, but longer on top, and a thin scar ran through his right eyebrow, a souvenir from a training session gone wrong. Nervous, human? Tex asked, checking the charge on his disruptor rifle. Focused, Kyle corrected, adjusting the combat armor that hugged his athletic build. After a year of intensive training, Draylock had finally deemed him ready for his first raid. The target. Vantis Station, a luxury trading post frequented by the galaxy's elite. Draylock stepped onto the bridge, his white hair braided tightly against his scalp for combat. Remember the plan. We hit the central vault, neutralize security, and extract before they can lock down the station. No unnecessary casualties. This last directive was relatively new for the Cerulean Raiders. Kyle had spent months arguing that excessive violence was bad for business. Dead merchants couldn't trade, and grieving families became vengeful. To his surprise, Draylock had eventually agreed to a more measured approach. The human wants to make us soft, one of the newer crew members muttered. The human wants to make us rich, Draylock countered, and alive to enjoy it. The boarding party assembled in the launch bay, 12 raiders including Kyle, Tex, and Draylock himself. As they prepared to board their shuttle, Draylock pulled Kyle aside. You've earned this opportunity, the captain said, his icy eyes searching Kyle's face. But remember, theory and practice are different beasts. Trust your instincts. Kyle nodded, surprised by the flutter of anticipation in his stomach. He had spent years hating these pirates, planning his eventual escape. Yet somewhere along the way, the line between captor and crew had blurred. He wasn't fighting for freedom anymore. He was fighting to prove himself. The shuttle detached silently, gliding through space toward the gleaming station. Vantis was constructed like a massive wheel, with spokes connecting a central hub to an outer ring. Luxury ships docked along the rim, while the most valuable goods were stored in the heavily guarded center. Final approach, Tex announced. Docking clamps ready. Kyle studied the station's security patterns on his wrist display. Something felt off. Captain, the patrol rotations are inconsistent with our intel. Draylock frowned. Explain. Security teams are doubling back at irregular intervals. Kyle pointed to the display. And there's a concentration of guards near the south entrance, our planned extraction point. Could be a coincidence, Tex suggested. Or an ambush, Kyle countered. They're expecting us. Draylock considered this for a moment. What do you propose? Kyle felt all eyes on him. This wasn't part of the plan, Draylock testing him mid-mission, but he didn't hesitate. We changed the entry point. Instead of the maintenance shaft, we use the waste disposal system. It's monitored but not guarded. And we split into two teams, a small diversion force at the original entry point, while the main team hits the vault from below. A tense silence followed. Then Draylock smiled, revealing those pearl-white teeth. The boy has tactical instincts. We proceed with Kyle's plan. The adjustment proved crucial. As the diversion team triggered alarms at the maintenance shaft, Kyle led the main force through the foul-smelling waste disposal tunnels. They emerged directly beneath the central vault, bypassing the majority of security forces who had rushed to the false breach. Cut here, Kyle instructed, pointing to a section of flooring. Tex deployed a molecular blade, slicing through the metal with surgical precision. The vault above was a treasure trove of rare artifacts, precious metals, and data crystals worth millions. The team worked efficiently, filling their containers while Kyle kept watch on the security feeds he'd hacked into. "We have 4 minutes before they realize the diversion is just that," he warned. They were nearly finished when Kyle spotted movement on the feed, a security team approaching from an unexpected direction. "New patrol, northeast corridor," he alerted. "They'll cut off our exit." Tex cursed. "We're trapped." "No," Kyle said, studying the station schematics. "There's another way." He pointed to a maintenance shaft that connected to the docking bay. "It's narrow, but will fit. Single file, quick and quiet." Draylock gave him an appraising look. "Lead on, Kyle Morrison." The team followed Kyle through the cramped passage, their precious cargo secured to their backs. They reached the docking bay just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Full lockdown initiated," an automated voice announced. "All ships grounded. Security teams to all exits." "We have maybe 30 seconds," Kyle calculated, already working on the docking clamp controls. "Not enough time to power up the shuttle," Tex growled. Kyle grinned. "Who said anything about powering up?" He finished his override and the docking clamps released. "The bay is depressurizing in 10 seconds. Hold on to something." When the bay doors opened, the vacuum of space did the work for them, sucking the unpowered shuttle out into the void. Once clear of the station, Tex activated the engines, and they rocketed toward the waiting Ravager. Back aboard the main ship, the crew celebrated their successful heist. The diversion team had also made it back safely, with only minor injuries. As the stellar Ravager jumped to hyperspace, leaving Vantis Station far behind, Draylock approached Kyle with 2 cups of the amber liquid they'd shared months ago. "To your first raid," the captain said, raising his cup, "executed with a precision many veteran pirates lack." Kyle accepted the drink, no longer flinching at its burn. "I got lucky." "No," Draylock corrected. "You adapted. You saw what others missed. That's not luck, and that's talent." He clinked his cup against Kyle's. "The crew is talking. They're calling you the human who thinks like a cerulean, but fights like something else entirely." For the first time, Kyle felt a genuine smile spread across his face. Not because he'd impressed the pirates, but because he'd surprised himself. The tactical thinking, the quick decisions, they had come naturally as if he'd been born for this life among the stars. "What happens now?" he asked. Draylock's eyes gleamed with something like pride. "Now? Now we see just how far a human with your particular talents can go." 3 years after his first raid, Kyle's reputation had grown alongside his skills. Now 21, he had become Draylock's most trusted lieutenant, much to the dismay of several long-serving crew members. The human's tactical mind had transformed the cerulean raiders from simple plunderers into strategic operators who left minimal casualties and maximum profits in their wake. "The Lurian estate," Draylock announced, projecting a holographic map of an elegant compound nestled in the lush hills of Luria Prime. "Home to Governor Thaler, one of the wealthiest collectors in the Outer Rim." Kyle studied the layout, memorizing entry points and security positions. "What's the target?" "The Stellar Heart," Draylock replied, displaying an image of a pulsing blue gemstone, a rare artifact that supposedly contains the compressed energy of a dying star, worth enough to keep us comfortable for a decade. "And heavily guarded, no doubt," Tex added, his tone carrying an edge that hadn't been there in the early days. Since Kyle's rise in the crew hierarchy, the second in command had grown increasingly cold toward him. "That's why I'm sending our best," Draylock said. "Kyle will lead the extraction team. Tex, you'll coordinate from the ship." The assignment was clear. Kyle in the field, Tex sidelined. The tension in the room thickened. "With respect, Captain," Tex said stiffly, "I have more experience with Lurian security systems. Perhaps I should—" "The decision is made," Draylock interrupted. "Kyle's team leaves at nightfall." As the meeting dispersed, Kyle felt Tex's glare burning into his back. He'd tried to build bridges with the lieutenant, but the alien's resentment had only deepened with each successful mission Kyle led. Hours later, Cal's team infiltrated the estate grounds with practiced efficiency. The mansion was hosting a gala, providing perfect cover for their operation. Wealthy aliens from across the sector mingled in the grand ballroom, while Kyle and 3 other raiders slipped through the gardens toward the private wing. "Security drones patrolling the east perimeter," whispered Nara, their tech specialist. "Bypassing now." Kyle nodded, scanning the ornate building. Something felt off. The security was present, but not as tight as expected for such a valuable artifact. "Hold position," he ordered, trusting his instincts. "I'm going to recon ahead." Using the shadows for cover, Kyle made his way to a side entrance. Through an open window, he could hear fragments of conversation from the party inside. He was about to move on when a flash of emerald caught his eye. A young woman stood alone on a balcony overlooking the gardens. Her lavender blue skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, contrasting with her flowing emerald gown. Long silver hair cascaded down her back, and when she turned, Kyle caught a glimpse of large violet eyes that somehow found his hiding place in the darkness. For a moment, neither moved. Then instead of screaming for guards, she simply raised an eyebrow. "If you're here to steal something," she said in a melodious voice that carried clearly to his position, "you should know the security system has already been alerted to your presence." Kyle tensed, ready to signal his team to abort, when she added, "Fortunately for you, I disabled it 20 minutes ago." Intrigued and suspicious, Kyle stepped partially from the shadows. "Why would you do that?" "Perhaps I find these parties insufferably boring," she replied with a slight smile. "Or perhaps I have my own reasons for wanting certain items to disappear from my father's collection." "The stellar heart," Kyle guessed. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "You're well informed, but no, you can take that worthless trinket. What I want removed is something far more dangerous in my father's hands." Before Kyle could respond, his comm unit buzzed. "Kyle, we have movement," Nara warned. "Guards converging on the west wing." The woman's expression changed. "That's not possible." "Unless," her eyes widened, "it's a trap. Someone knew you were coming." Kyle's mind raced. The minimal security, Tex's unusual insistence on leading the mission, his growing resentment. "Your team needs to leave now," she urged. "The west passage leads to a maintenance tunnel that exits beyond the perimeter." "Why help us?" Kyle demanded. Her violet eyes met his with surprising intensity. "Because my father's allies are not people I wish to see succeed." "Now go." Kyle hesitated only a moment before making a decision. "What's your name?" "Iona," she answered. "Now please, before the guards." A shout from inside the mansion cut her off. Kyle activated his comm. "All units fall back. Take the west passage to the maintenance tunnel. It's a trap." As his team acknowledged, Kyle gave Iona one last look. "This isn't over." "I should hope not," she replied with unexpected warmth. Kyle rejoined his team, leading them through the passage Iona had indicated. They escaped the estate grounds just as alarms began blaring behind them. Back aboard the Stellar Ravager, Draylock was furious. "An ambush? How?" "Someone tipped them off," Kyle said carefully, watching Tex's reaction from the corner of his eye. The lieutenant's face remained impassive, but his four-fingered hands clenched slightly. "And yet you all escaped unharmed," Draylock noted. "Impressive." "We had help," Kyle admitted. "The governor's daughter." This caught everyone's attention. Tex's eyes narrowed. Why would she betray her own father? "I don't know," Kyle answered honestly, "but she saved our lives." Later, alone in his quarters, Kyle replayed the encounter with Iona in his mind. Her violet eyes, the way she'd spoken to him without fear, the mystery of her motives. For the first time in years, something beyond the next mission had captured his interest. He was so absorbed in these thoughts that he almost missed the slight hiss of his door opening. Years of training had him rolling from his bunk just as a vibro blade sliced through the space where his chest had been. "Too slow, human," Tex growled, advancing with the blade. Kyle grabbed his own knife from beneath his pillow. "So it was you who set us up." "You've taken everything," Tex snarled. "My position, Draylock's favor, the crew's respect. Did you think I would just accept it?" "I earned my place," Kyle countered, circling warily. "Your place," Tex laughed bitterly. "You're not even cerulean. You're a pet that learned tricks." The lieutenant lunged, his blade humming with deadly energy. Kyle parried, the clash sending sparks across the dimly lit room. The fight that followed was brutal and silent, neither wanting to alert the rest of the crew. As they grappled, Kyle realized with clarity that this confrontation had been inevitable from the moment Draylock had chosen to mentor him. Some wounds couldn't be healed with time or success, only blood would satisfy. The fight with Tex ended with Kyle pinning the lieutenant to the floor, knife pressed against his throat. Despite years of resentment boiling between them, Kyle couldn't bring himself to deliver the killing blow. "Do it!" Tex hissed, his icy eyes burning with hatred. "Prove you're worthy of replacing me." "I'm not going to kill you," Kyle replied, breathing hard. "But this ends now." The door to his quarters slid open, revealing Draylock leaning against the frame, arms crossed. He didn't look surprised to find his two top officers locked in mortal combat. "I was wondering how long it would take," the captain said calmly. Kyle maintained his hold on Texas. "You knew he would try to kill me." "I knew he would either accept you or challenge you." Draylock stepped into the room. "It's our way." Understanding dawned on Kyle. "This was a test." "The final one," Draylock confirmed. "And you've passed, not by killing your rival, but by showing mercy when you could have taken vengeance. That's what separates a leader from a mere fighter." Tex's face contorted with disbelief. "This human shows weakness, and you call it strength?" "He shows judgment," Draylock corrected. "Something you've clearly lost, Lieutenant. Or did you think I wouldn't notice your betrayal on Luria?" The captain's tone remained even, but his eyes had turned to glacial shards. "You endangered my crew. Worse, you did it out of pride." Kyle released Tex, stepping back as the lieutenant scrambled to his feet. For a moment it seemed Tex might lunge again, but Draylock's presence held him in check. "You have a choice," Draylock told him. "Accept Kyle as my heir apparent and serve under him, or leave my ship at the next port." Tex's face drained of color. "Heir? You would make this, human your successor?" "I would make the best warrior and tactician I've ever trained my successor," Draylock replied. "His species is irrelevant." The tension stretched between them until finally Tex gave a stiff nod. I will consider your offer, Captain." Without another word, he left the quarters, his back rigid with wounded pride. When they were alone, Kyle turned to Draylock. "You never mentioned succession before." "Because you weren't ready." Draylock clasped Kyle's shoulder. "But now you are. The Cerulean Raiders need leadership that looks to the future, not just the next raid. You've shown that vision." The captain's words filled Kyle with unexpected pride, yet something else tugged at his thoughts. "We need to return to Luria." Draylock raised an eyebrow. "Because of the governor's daughter?" "She helped us escape a trap. She has her own agenda against her father." Kyle hesitated. "And she knows something about the stellar heart, something that made her call it worthless compared to what she wants removed from her father's collection." "Intriguing," Draylock admitted, "but risky. Governor Thalor will have doubled his security." "Which is why he won't expect us to return so soon," Kyle argued. "And this time, we'll have inside help." 2 days later, Kyle found himself back on Luria Prime, alone and dressed in the formal attire of a wealthy merchant rather than his combat gear. Intelligence gathered by their contacts had revealed that Iona would be attending a diplomatic function at the capital's Grand Pavilion. The pavilion was a marvel of Lurian architecture, floating platforms connected by shimmering energy bridges, each level hosting different entertainments for the elite. Kyle moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his altered appearance and forged credentials granting him access to the upper tiers where the most influential guests mingled. He spotted her on the third level, surrounded by admirers but looking thoroughly bored. Her gown tonight was a deep sapphire that complemented her lavender skin, and her silver hair was styled in an elaborate updo that emphasized her elegant neck. Their eyes met across the platform, and Kyle saw recognition flash in her violet gaze. She excused herself from her companions and drifted toward a less crowded area near an ornamental garden. Kyle followed, maintaining a casual distance. "You're either incredibly brave or remarkably foolish to return," Iona said when he joined her, her voice low but tinged with amusement. "I've been called both," Kyle replied with a slight smile, "though I prefer persistent. My father has tripled security since your visit. He's convinced the Cerulean Raiders will return for the Stellar Heart. Is that what you want? For us to take it?" Iona studied him, her expression guarded yet curious. "What I want is far more complicated." She glanced around, then took his arm. "Walk with me. We're too exposed here." The touch of her hand sent an unexpected warmth through Kyle's arm. They strolled through the garden, appearing to any observer like two guests enjoying a private conversation. "My father is part of a consortium called the Astral Conclave," she explained. "They collect artifacts of power, not for their value but for their potential as weapons. The Stellar Heart is merely a test case for something far more dangerous." "What could be more dangerous than compressed stellar energy?" Kyle asked. "The heart of eternity," Iona replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. "An artifact that can allegedly control time itself. But my father has acquired the first fragment, with two more scattered across the galaxy. If the Conclave assembles all three, they could rewrite history," Kyle finished, the implication staggering. Iona nodded. "Now you understand why I helped you. The Conclave must be stopped, and I can't do it alone." Their path had taken them to a secluded alcove overlooking the city lights. In the privacy of the shadows, Iona turned to face him fully. "Why trust me with this?" Kyle asked. "I'm a pirate, a human, a stranger." "Because you're different," she said simply. "I've watched how the Cerulean Raiders have changed under your influence. Less bloodshed, more precision. You care about more than just profit." Her perception was unsettling yet accurate. Kyle had indeed steered the Raiders toward a code that minimized casualties, though he'd never articulated why. "And," she added with a hint of mischief in her eyes, "I've never met a human before. Your species is fascinating." The way she said fascinating sent a different kind of heat through Kyle's body. Their proximity in the alcove suddenly felt charged with something beyond conspiracy. "Fascinating how?" he found himself asking. And Iona stepped closer, her violet eyes reflecting the city lights. "Your adaptability, your resilience, your capacity for both violence and compassion." Her fingers traced the scar through his eyebrow. "Your contradictions." The touch of her cool fingers against his skin broke something loose in Kyle, a longing he hadn't acknowledged since being taken from Earth. In that moment, he wasn't a pirate, or a warrior, or Drelok's heir. He was simply a man, drawn to a woman who saw him clearly. When their lips met, it was like worlds colliding, not a different species, different lives, different destinies converging in a single point of connection. Her skin was cooler than a human's, her scent reminiscent of night-blooming flowers. But the hunger in her kiss was universal. They parted, both slightly breathless. Iona's violet eyes had darkened with desire, but there was wariness there too. "This complicates things," she murmured. Kyle smiled. "I specialize in complications." The night before the heist, Kyle and Iona found sanctuary in a small, discreet dwelling on the outskirts of the capital. The safe house belonged to a network of dissidents who opposed the Astral Conclave's growing influence, allies Iona had cultivated over years of quiet rebellion against her father. Rain pattered against the transparent dome ceiling, casting rippling shadows across the room. Kyle stood by the window, watching distant lightning illuminate the Lurian skyline, while Iona studied the holographic plans of her father's estate. "The security upgrades are extensive," she noted, manipulating the display with graceful fingers. "But there's a vulnerability in the rotation schedule during the gala tomorrow night. A 7-minute window when the vault will be minimally guarded." Kyle turned from the window. 7 minutes to grab both artifacts and escape undetected. "It would be impossible for anyone else," Iona said, her violet eyes meeting his with unmistakable admiration. "But you're not anyone else." The confidence in her voice stirred something in Kyle. Pride, certainly, but also a deeper connection that had been growing between them since their first encounter. In the 3 days since their meeting at the Grand Pavilion, they had planned meticulously while navigating the undeniable attraction that pulled them together. "Drelok will have the extraction team ready at these coordinates," Kyle said, marking a point on the holographic map. "Once we have the artifacts, We'll have exactly 12 minutes to reach the rendezvous. Iona nodded, then deactivated the hologram. The room dimmed, leaving only the ambient glow of Luria's twin moons filtering through the rain-streaked dome. "And after?" she asked softly. "When this is over?" The question hung between them, laden with implications. Kyle had been avoiding thoughts of after, focusing instead on the immediate mission. But now, with Iona's question, he was forced to confront the crossroads ahead. "I don't know," he admitted. "Draylock has named me his successor. The Raiders are the only family I've known since Tarsus Prime." "Yet you're not like them," Iona observed, moving closer. "Not entirely. There's something in you that remains distinctly human." Her cool fingers traced the line of his jaw, sending electricity through his skin. "What does that mean to you? Being human among aliens?" Kyle had never been asked this question before, had never really considered it himself. "Adaptation," he finally said. "Humans survive by adapting, by taking pieces of what surrounds them and making it their own." "Is that what you've done with the Raiders? Adapted their ways to suit your nature?" "Yes," Kyle realized. "The tactics, the precision, the code that minimizes casualties. That's my humanity reshaping what it means to be a Cerulean Raider." Iona's lips curved into a smile. "That's what fascinates me about you. Your species bends but doesn't break. You transform your surroundings rather than being transformed by them." Her words resonated with a truth Kyle had never articulated. Throughout his years with Draylock, he had indeed changed the Raiders' methods while adopting their skills. He had become something new, neither fully the human boy from Tarsus Prime, nor a true Cerulean pirate. "What about you?" he asked, his hands finding her waist. "What happens to the governor's rebellious daughter after we steal her father's prized artifacts?" "Exile, most likely," she replied with surprising lightness, "though I've prepared for that eventuality. There are worlds beyond the Conclave's reach where I could start anew." The implication in her tone was clear, an invitation, a possibility. Their lips met with newfound urgency, the looming danger of tomorrow's mission stripping away pretense. What followed was an exploration of differences and similarities. Her cooler skin against his warmth, the unfamiliar contours of her body, the universal language of desire that transcended species. In those hours wrapped in each other's arms beneath the rain-washed light of alien moons, Kyle experienced a connection that went beyond physical pleasure. For the first time since being taken from his homeworld, he felt truly seen, not as a human curiosity or a tactical asset, but as himself. Dawn found them entwined, the peaceful moment shattered by the urgent beeping of Kyle's communicator. Draylock's voice emerged, tense and clipped. "We've been compromised. Tex has disappeared with the tactical plans." Kyle bolted upright. "How much does he know?" "Everything," Draylock growled. "Entry points, timing, extraction coordinates." Iona's face paled to a lighter shade of lavender. "If he's gone to my father—" "Worse," Kyle interrupted, the pieces falling into place. "He's gone to the Conclave. They'll be expecting us." "Abort?" Draylock asked. Kyle exchanged a look with Iona. "No. We adapt. New plan, new timeline. We move now, not tonight." "The security will be at full strength," Iona warned. "Which is why they won't expect a daylight raid," Kyle countered. "And we have an advantage Tex doesn't know about." "What's that?" Draylock asked. Kyle looked at Iona. "We know why they want humans." During their intimate night between moments of passion, Iona had revealed a disturbing truth. The Conclave's research suggested that humans possessed a unique neurological structure that could potentially interface with the heart of eternity. Their interest in Kyle wasn't coincidental. They had been monitoring his rise among the Raiders, recognizing in him the perfect combination of human adaptability and combat training. "They don't just want the artifacts," Kyle explained to Draylock. "They want me, as a test subject." A heavy silence followed. Then Draylock spoke, his voice hardened with resolve. "Then we'll give them what they want. On our terms." The new plan was audacious, borderline suicidal. Kyle would allow himself to be captured, using the Conclave's interest in him as a Trojan horse. Meanwhile, Iona would use her access to guide Draylock and a small team to the vault during the confusion. As they prepared to separate, Kyle pulled Iona close one last time. "If this goes wrong," she silenced him with a fierce kiss. "It won't. You're human. You adapt." Her confidence bolstered his resolve. With a final embrace, they parted. Kyle to walk willingly into the trap set by Tex, and Iona to lead Dreylock's team through the secret passages of her childhood home. What neither of them anticipated was Governor Thalor's own plans for his daughter. As Kyle approached the estate's main entrance, prepared to surrender himself as bait, he glimpsed movement in an upper window. Iona, struggling in the grip of two guards, her father's imposing figure visible behind her. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that moment, Kyle realized the trap had sprung in an unexpected direction. The Conclave didn't just want a human test subject. They wanted leverage. "The human specimen is secured, Governor Thalor." Kyle kept his expression neutral as the guards escorted him into the estate's subterranean laboratory. He'd surrendered without resistance, exactly as planned, though seeing Iona captured had nearly derailed his composure. Now, with his hands bound by energy cuffs, he was led past gleaming equipment and strange devices whose purpose he could only guess at. Governor Thalor stood at the center of the room, tall and imposing, with the same lavender-blue skin as his daughter, but none of her warmth. His silver hair was cropped short, and his violet eyes held calculating coldness. "Kyle Morrison," Thalor said, circling him with clinical interest. "The human who transformed the Cerulean Raiders. I've been following your career with great interest." "I'm flattered," Kyle replied dryly. "Where's Iona?" "My daughter is being reminded of her familial obligations," Thalor dismissed with a wave. "Her misguided rebellion ends today." From the shadows emerged a familiar blue figure, Tex, now dressed in the formal attire of the Conclave rather than pirate gear. His face bore a smug satisfaction that made Kyle's fists clench within their restraints. "Your human pet walked right into our hands, just as I predicted," Tex told Thalor. "Dreylock's judgment has clearly been compromised by sentiment." "And yours by jealousy," Kyle countered. "How much did they promise you, Tex? A ship? A crew? Or just the satisfaction of betrayal?" Before Tex could respond, another figure entered, a tall, spindly alien with paper-thin gray skin and six-fingered hands. "The preparations are complete, Governor. We can begin the interface test." Kyle was led to a circular platform where a pedestal stood, bearing a pulsing crystalline fragment, the first piece of the heart of eternity. It glowed with an inner light that seemed to shift between colors, never settling on any single hue. "You see, Mr. Morrison," Thalor explained, "humans possess a unique neurological structure, adaptable, malleable in ways other species are not. Our research suggests this makes you uniquely suited to interface with certain artifacts of power." "Guinea pig wasn't part of my career plan," Kyle remarked, scanning the room for weaknesses, exits, anything he could use. Thalor smiled thinly. "You misunderstand. This is an honor. If successful, you'll be the first being in millennia to harness the heart's power. Of course, the process is not without risk." The gray-skinned scientist approached with a neural interface crown. "Previous test subjects experienced significant neural degradation, but none were human. Your adaptability may be the key." As the crown was placed on Kyle's head, he caught sight of movement in an observation chamber above. Iona, her hands pressed against the transparent barrier, her face a mask of horror and determination. Their eyes locked, and in that silent exchange, Kyle drew strength. "Begin the interface," Thalor commanded. The crown activated with a soft hum, and Kyle felt tendrils of energy probing his mind. He'd expected pain, but instead found something stranger, a sensation like water flowing around rocks, seeking the path of least resistance. The heart fragment pulsed brighter, its colors swirling faster. "Remarkable," the scientist murmured, monitoring readings. "The human's neural pathways are reconfiguring in response to the artifact. He's adapting to it." Kyle closed his eyes, focusing on the strange energy flowing through him. Rather than fighting it, he let it come, but directed it, channeled it, the way Dreylock had taught him to redirect an opponent's momentum in combat. The heart's energy surged, and suddenly Kyle could perceive the room differently. seeing not just with his eyes, but somehow sensing the electrical impulses of every device, every nervous system present. Time seemed to slow as his awareness expanded. Heart rate increasing, the scientist reported, voice tinged with concern. Neural activity off the charts. We should terminate. No, Thaler interrupted. Push forward. We're witnessing something unprecedented. Kyle felt his restraints as patterns of energy, simple patterns he could disrupt with a thought. The cuffs deactivated, falling away from his wrists. Before anyone could react, he reached out and touched the heart fragment directly. Power exploded through him, raw, ancient, and overwhelming. For a moment, he thought it would tear him apart. But then his human adaptability, the very quality Iona had admired, asserted itself. His mind reconfigured, accommodating the surge, channeling it. The laboratory erupted into chaos. Equipment shorted out, lights flickered, and the guards dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by a psychic shockwave. Kyle stood at the center, the heart fragment hovering between his palms, his eyes glowing with its shifting colors. Impossible, Thaler gasped, staggering backward. Kyle turned to Tex, who was frantically drawing his weapon. With a thought, Kyle disabled it, the energy cells draining instantly. You were right about one thing, Tex, Kyle said, his voice resonating strangely. I'm not cerulean. I'm human. And that makes me something you never understood, adaptable. With another thought, he shattered the observation chamber's barrier. Iona leapt down, landing gracefully beside him. The vault, she urged. We need the stellar heart, too. Kyle nodded, extending his temporarily enhanced senses through the estate. He could perceive the vault's security systems, the guards' positions, even Draylock and his team infiltrating through the eastern wing. This way, he said, taking Iona's hand. They moved through the estate like ghosts, Kyle's enhanced perception allowing them to avoid guards and deactivate security measures with mere thoughts. In the vault, they found the stellar heart, a blue gemstone that pulsed with compressed stellar energy. Draylock, Kyle communicated mentally, startling the pirate captain who was leading his team through a service corridor. Meet us at the south landing pad. We have both artifacts. As they secured their prizes and made for the extraction point, Kyle felt the heart's power beginning to fade. His enhanced perception was receding, the temporary connection weakening. It's not permanent, Iona observed, noting the dimming glow in his eyes. It doesn't need to be, Kyle replied. Just long enough. They reached the landing pad just as alarms blared throughout the estate. Draylock's shuttle descended through Luria's pastel sky, hatch opening to receive them. As they boarded, Kyle turned back to see Governor Thaler and a squad of guards rushing onto the pad, Tex among them. This isn't over, human, Thaler shouted. Kyle smiled, the last vestiges of the heart's power flowing through him. With a final thought, he overloaded the estate's power grid, plunging the entire compound into darkness as their shuttle soared away. Aboard the Stellar Ravager, safely in hyperspace, Draylock examined the two artifacts now secured in a containment field. The Conclave will hunt us to the edges of the galaxy for this, he noted. Let them try, Kyle replied, still feeling echoes of the heart's energy in his mind. We'll be ready. Iona, who had officially become a fugitive by leaving with them, leaned against Kyle's shoulder. What will you do with them? The Stellar Heart goes to the Science Coalition, Kyle decided. They'll use its energy for research, not weapons. As for the Heart of Eternity fragment, he looked at Draylock. We find the other pieces before the Conclave does, and make sure they're never assembled. Draylock nodded approvingly. A worthy mission for the Cerulean Raiders' new direction. Later, in the privacy of Kyle's quarters, now the captain's quarters, as Draylock had formally stepped down, naming Kyle his successor, Iona traced the lingering energy patterns visible beneath Kyle's skin, fading remnants of his connection to the artifact. You could have kept that power, she observed, used it to control the heart permanently. Power isn't the point, Kyle replied, drawing her close. Connection is. Their kiss deepened, celebrating survival and new beginnings. In the soft glow of starlight streaming through the viewport, they reaffirmed the bond that had formed between them, human and alien, united by something stronger than differences. What happens now, Captain Morrison? Iona asked with a playful smile. Kyle grinned. We adapt. Together. Across the ship, Draylock stood on the observation deck, watching the stars streak by. He thought about the scrawny human boy he'd found on Tarsus Prime 14 years ago, swinging a pipe at pirates 10 times his size. He'd seen something then, a spark of indomitable human spirit that could reshape the galaxy. He hadn't been wrong. The Cerulean Raiders would continue under Kyle's leadership, evolving from mere pirates into something more complex. Treasure hunters, artifact protectors, perhaps even reluctant heroes. And at their core would be that uniquely human quality that had impressed Draylock from the beginning. The ferocious determination to stand against impossible odds, to adapt rather than surrender, to transform rather than be transformed. Humanity indeed.